when we had a vigil on Saturday night in Hamilton, I made this comment that, well, there must have been about over 4,000 people that night, that so many of us now know where there is a mosque in Hamilton. So many of us know where the Muslims go to pray. And that was the positive side of it, that at least people found out that where the mosque is and they come in. I mean, I was amazed when one or two visitors told me that they had been trying to get flowers and they went to 2-3 shops and the flowers were sold out.
It's wonderful. We've got to move on, but I really appreciate your time with us, your short time with us. Waikato Muslim Association's Dr. Asad Mohsin there. 5 away from 5. Well, it was back to school today for the children of Christchurch, and we're going to talk to the principal of Linwood Avenue Primary in a tick. But just back to the top of the show, Raf, what do you say to? How do you talk to your kids about the terrible things that happen in the world?
Look, I think you try and explain it as honestly and openly as possible, and just reassure them that it's okay to feel anxious or worried, and let them just work through those feelings, but just keep providing that reassurance to them that they're safe and that it's okay to talk about this.
Yeah, one of the things that occurred to me in this discussion today actually was the problem with the earthquakes. This in some ways is a little easier dealing with the children, because the problem with earthquakes is you just finish explaining one and then another one would arrive, and the terrible uncertainty was that with all those aftershocks, thousands of them, you couldn't really say, well, it's okay now, it's all going to be fine now, it's moved on, because, of course, we got caught with the first earthquake. The second one was bigger, contrary to expectations, and all the sort of reassurance offered to children, particularly those 5 to 10, that sort of vulnerable age, it just seemed to fall by the wayside. At least with this, we have an event, a shocking, horrible, ghastly event, but heaven forbid that might be another one of these people out here, we've got a reasonable chance of being able to say, all right, this is what happened, and perhaps we can move on from here and try and reassure children about that.
Well, let's have
that in a way as a help.
Let's have the final word with the principal of Linwood Primary to close out the show. How have you observed how the kids are being with each other, Blair Dravitsky?
Yeah, we actually had a relatively good day, all things considering. We had the assembly this morning at 9 o'clock, and then after that we had quite a calm and peaceful day, I guess supporting each other, all being through the same thing on Friday. So,
yeah. And as Gary said, I mean, you made it through the earthquakes. How do you compare the two as far as the impact on children goes?
I mean, as mentioned, it was we've tried to reassure them today that they are safe and that they are in the best place for us to talk about it and share our experiences together. We all went through it on Friday, but as you said with the earthquakes, it was that, I guess, uncertainty of not knowing if there was another one coming. So they are slightly different, and I think the kids have responded well today to the year, considering all circumstances. Yeah.
Blair Dravitsky, principal of Linwood Avenue Primary School, rounding up the show, and Gary McCormick and Ralph Manji, I really appreciate you being with us today on the panel.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and thanks to the rest of New Zealand for what you've been doing for us as well.
Thank you for the support that you've shown our city.
Thank you very much. Checkpoint up next. I'm Wallace Chapman, back tomorrow, 3:45. Thank you very much to my producer, Julie Moffat.
This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Alex Perrottet. I realised someone has come to kill us. The words of one survivor of Friday's massacre in Christchurch. 100 people were gunned down, 50 are dead, 50 are injured, including a 4-year-old girl with gunshot wounds at Starship Hospital. Today, harrowing stories are being told by family members, survivors, as well as the brave people who were first on the scene. Bodies are still being identified, with only one released so far, and tonight grieving family members say they're running out of patience. We have the latest from the police, the reaction from Australia, as well as the owner of the gun store that supplied 4 firearms to the gunman. Our host, Lisa Owen, is on the ground in Christchurch speaking to survivors. We'll have more after the news.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leia tawa tēnei. Cabinet has held a lengthy meeting this afternoon as ministers grapple with potential changes to the gun laws. The Prime Minister has asked for briefings on gaps in the law, as well as information about border security and information sharing with Australia. Jacinda Ardern has given strong indications a ban on semi-automatic weapons will be among the options on the table. The National Party leader Simon Bridges says everything has changed and he is open to looking at changes once Ms Ardern makes clear what Cabinet wants to do. Ms Ardern is due to brief media in the next half hour. The Managing Director of Gun City has confirmed the accused Christchurch gunman, Brenton Tarrant, acquired 4 weapons from its online store. But David Tipple says he did not get a military-style semi-automatic weapon through his company. Mr Tipple held a news conference in Christchurch this afternoon. While he says he supports the Prime Minister's swift actions following the attack and her announcement gun laws will change, he refused to answer questions about that.
I totally agree there should be a gun debate, but today is not the day. Please respect me on this. I'm going to leave if these are the only questions you have.
David Tipple says it was appropriate for Gun City in Christchurch to remain open over the weekend despite many stores closing their doors. And he says the company is working to pull billboards showing children firing weapons at targets. A man charged with distributing a live stream of the Christchurch mosque shootings and making other objectionable publications has been declined bail. The 18-year-old, who has name suppression, appeared in the Christchurch District Court this afternoon. Katie Todd reports.
Along with sharing the live stream video, the man has been charged with making objectionable publications in the week prior to the attacks. That includes messages inciting extreme violence and a photo of one of the mosques which was attacked, with the words "Target identified." He was arrested on Friday, but the police say they do not believe he was directly involved in the attacks. The public gallery was cleared for his appearance when Judge Stephen O'Driscoll decided not to grant him bail and impose strict limits on any media reporting. The man wore jeans and a t-shirt and stood with his head down, facing the judge. He has been remanded in custody to reappear on April the 8th. In Christchurch, Katie Todd.
An ambulance officer who treated people at the Deans Avenue Mosque says it was the most horrific scene he has ever attended. Paul Bennett was among the first wave of emergency staff dispatched to the scene of the shootings and says he and his fellow paramedics had to move bodies out of the way to get to the injured. Mr Bennett also worked during the Canterbury earthquakes, but says the shootings were completely different.
The earthquake was something, it's kind of like it was Mother Nature, and you could explain that in your own head. The scene at Deans Ave was about hatred. That's the feeling I got from the Deans Ave site.
Paul Bennett says the flow of patients from the scene to hospital was seamless and he believes that helped to save lives. Most of the families of those who died in Friday's mass killing have decided to have a group burial on Wednesday. Council staff have been frantically working to prepare graves at the Memorial Park Cemetery in Bromley for the unprecedented event. At a news conference this afternoon, the Deputy Police Commissioner, Wally Homaha, says they are aiming to have all the bodies released by Wednesday. The President of the Federation of Islamic Associations, Mustafa Farouk, says families have been given options for private burials or sending the bodies back to their home country, but most have opted for a group burial. 2 patients injured in the mosque attacks were well enough to be discharged from Christchurch Hospital today. There are still 31 patients who were injured remaining in hospital, 9 of whom are critically ill in intensive care. The Canterbury District Health Board says a 4-year-old girl who was transferred to Starship Hospital is still there. Her father also has been transferred to Auckland to be closer to family members, and he remains in a serious but stable condition. Hundreds of students are gathering at the Deans Avenue Memorial for a vigil for those killed in Friday's mosque shootings. The gathering was organised by Kashmir High School head boy Okirano Tilaya as the Students Uniting in Love event. Students, many in their school uniforms, are lighting candles, making paper chains and singing to remember the dead. Hundreds of people have been ringing the free counselling line following the mosque shootings on Friday. The Ministry of Health and other government departments have given an update of their response to the massacre. The Ministry's Director-General, Ashley Bloomfield, says there has been a huge increase in the use of the 1737 line from people in Canterbury and across the country. He says yesterday 544 people got in touch, and so far today 300 people had contacted the support line.
And that includes a wide range of people, including individuals who were directly caught up in the attacks in one or other of the mosques, through to ordinary New Zealanders around the rest of the country.
We're interrupting that story now to cross to the Prime Minister with a briefing from today's Cabinet meeting.
Questions from a foreign policy perspective, or any questions around contact that we've had from other world leaders over the course of the last 72 hours. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge again and use this opportunity to again highlight 1737 as the contact number that anyone can text or call if they are feeling distress, if they have any mental health concerns for themselves or a loved one. We have had, I'm advised, over 500 calls or contacts to the 1737 number. It has ranged from people who simply feel distressed to those themselves, those who have been caught up in the terrorist attack on Friday. So it is a line that has specialist support available, and I again encourage those who need it to utilise it. Let me give you an overview to begin with of the coming days. Tomorrow, as the Leader of the House has advised, members of Parliament will gather in the House at 2 p.m. to make statements of condolence for victims of the Christchurch mosque's terror attack. The House will then adjourn for the day and will meet again on Wednesday at 2 p.m. for Members' Day. On Wednesday, I will return to Christchurch. I will be meeting again with first responders, including St John's ambulance and frontline support staff. I plan on meeting with family members, but I'm also very mindful that families are receiving their loved ones for burial. And I certainly intend, and I ask others also, to be respectful, of course, at this hugely sensitive time. Today, Cabinet was expanded to include representatives from our confidence and supply support partner, the Green Party. It was an opportunity to discuss several key issues and pieces of work, and having all parties around the table has helped to expedite that process. I'll run through now several preliminary decisions that have been made. Cabinet today made in-principle decisions around the reform of our gun laws. I intend to give further detail of these decisions to the media and public before Cabinet meets again next Monday. This ultimately means that within 10 days of this horrific act of terrorism, we will have announced reforms which will, I believe, make our communities safer. In the intervening period, we will be working hard and as quickly as we can to finalise some of the details around the decision Cabinet has made today and the consequences of it. As a Cabinet, we were absolutely unified and very clear. The terror attack in Christchurch on Friday was the worst act of terrorism on our shores. It was, in fact, one of the worst globally in recent times. It has exposed a range of weaknesses in New Zealand's gun laws. The clear lesson from history around the world is that to make our communities safer, the time to act is now. I know that this might, for a short period, create a small degree of uncertainty amongst some gun owners, including those who possess guns for legitimate reasons, and I particularly acknowledge those in our rural communities. I want to assure you that the work that we are doing is not directed at you. In fact, I strongly believe that the vast majority of gun owners in New Zealand will agree with the sentiment that change needs to occur. I, in fact, believe that they will be with us. In the meantime, I want to remind people You can surrender your gun to the police at any time. In fact, I've seen reports that people are in fact already doing this. I applaud that effort. And if you're thinking about surrendering your weapon, I would encourage you to do so. Today it was also agreed that there will be an inquiry to look at the specific circumstances leading up to the Christchurch Mosque's terror attack on March 15. The purpose of this inquiry is to look at what all relevant agencies knew or could or should have known about the individual and his activities, including his access to weapons and whether they could have been in a position to prevent the attack. It will look at whether there were any impediments to the sharing of information, such as legislative or intelligence sharing challenges. The key agencies we'll be looking at include the New Zealand SIS, GCSB, Police, Customs and Immigration. I want to highlight again, though, this is an inquiry that these agencies absolutely support. The inquiry will also look at the individual's travel movements to and from New Zealand and internationally, his activities in New Zealand and his use of social media and his connection to others. The terms of reference are currently being finalised and decisions around who will lead the inquiry and what form it will take will also be made shortly. Our key considerations will be public confidence in the work, timeliness, and the management of classified information. We're also mindful, of course, that criminal proceedings are underway. The government has also had preliminary discussions around ensuring New Zealanders have the ability to commemorate as one the lives lost at Deans Avenue and Linwood Mosques. A number of vigils have already been held in local communities throughout New Zealand. I have no doubt that these will continue. In fact, I encourage people to come together. While I will not be announcing the memorial date today, I can assure you that the Department of Internal Affairs will be working in conjunction with the Muslim community, iwi, local government and the Mayor of Christchurch, police and other agencies. I can confirm the memorial will not be held this week. We want to ensure that the priority for the coming days is the family's opportunity to grieve together. I will, however, look to announce a date as soon as I am able. As I said yesterday, the families of those who have lost a loved one can apply for a funeral grant of around $10,000, which is made available via ACC. What I've made clear to agencies today is that further costs should be covered up front for these families taking their loved ones overseas. Details around these provisions are currently being finalised by officials, but victim support will help manage this process with the victims' families. There will continue to be higher police visibility and presence over coming weeks in Christchurch. I understand this may concern some people, but it is not about a specific threat. As I've said before, this is about taking a precautionary approach and providing reassurance as investigations continue into the terrorist attack on Friday. We're now both available for any questions.
Welcome back to Checkpoint. I'm Alex Perrottet in the Auckland studio. Lisa Owen is live in Christchurch. Now, as you just heard, the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced that there will be gun reforms after what she described as the worst act of terrorism on our shores. She says we'll have details in the coming days, indeed in 1 week's time, next Monday. She's also just announced a formal inquiry into the terror attack, which will look at the gunman's travel, his social media activities, indeed who else he was in contact with. This comes after Gun City owner David Tipple confirmed today that its Christchurch store sold alleged gunman Brenton Tarrant 4 A-category firearms legally. Trade Me has today put a halt on the sale of semi-automatic weapons and parts. Now, just one body has been released so far to families, but all bodies are expected to be released by Wednesday. Ambulance officers have also spoken for the first time today about the scene of hatred and, quote, the river of blood. at the Deans Avenue Mosque on Friday. And counter-terror police in Australia have raided homes in New South Wales on the north coast in Grafton and Sandy Bay, and that includes the house of the accused gunman's sister as part of an investigation into the Christchurch terror attacks. The Police Commissioner Mike Bush will speak at 5:30. We'll go live to him. But first, let's go to Christchurch, where Lisa Owen, our visual journalist Logan Church and cameraman Simon Rogers have spent the day speaking to survivors. Lisa?
Hi Alex, I'm just a short distance from the Al Noor Mosque on Deans Avenue, where 42 people lost their lives on Friday and dozens of others were injured. In the past hour, hundreds, possibly thousands of students have gathered across the road here to express their condolences at a vigil. Now this vigil was organised by Okarano Telea, and he joins me now. Okarana, why did you think that the young people of Christchurch needed this?
The young people needed this to not only to show the nation, but to show themselves the positive impact that they can have on this community in terms of, after a horrific event. Often others turn to hatred and darkness, blaming others for the horrific events, but we turn to peace and love.
You can probably hear just in the background there's an impromptu haka, a fierce haka taking place. Okarana, what do you think of what you've seen today from the students? Song, haka, prayer?
So proud. I'm so proud to be part of this great community, especially for my parents coming over from Samoa to give me a better life. And this is just a little thing I can give back to them. Showing them, giving the youth of Christchurch a voice, a bridge to help support this positive movement.
How has what happened on Friday affected your school?
At the moment, sorry, I just don't feel comfortable talking about that.
That's okay.
That's right, yeah.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
What's your message today?
My message today is simply going by the guidelines of Martin Luther King. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can. And hatred cannot drive out hatred, only love can.
Thank you. Appreciate you joining us this evening. And you can probably still hear that haka going on in the background. Students have been on their knees on the road here praying. A Kiwi flag has been laid out in front of the candlelit vigil, and more flowers just keep coming. As the students linger in the park behind me, they've also laid out banners and special messages, and we can talk about that a little later. But today, we found out 4 of the weapons owned by Brenton Tarrant were purchased online through the firearms seller Gun City. Now, the managing director of Gun City held a rather combative news conference in Christchurch today, looking to clear up his company's involvement in the mosque attacks. Now, David Tipple says that he does support a national debate on the future of gun laws, but he didn't want to talk about that today. And Ben Strang was at that press conference.
I've informed the police that Gun City sold the alleged gunman 4 A-category firearms and ammunition. All Gun City sales to this individual followed a police-verified online mail order process. I provided the police with...
Brenton Tarrant launched his attack on 2 mosques on Friday. He had 5 weapons at his disposal. Today it was revealed 4 of the guns the accused owned were purchased online through the firearms retailer Gun City. Gun City's managing director, David Tipple, says the military-style semi-automatic weapon that was used wasn't a product sold by Gun City.
I've informed the police that Gun City sold the alleged gunman 4 A-category firearms and ammunition. All Gun City sales to this individual followed a police-verified online mail order process. I provided the police with full details of those sales. We detected nothing extraordinary about the licence holder. The MSSA, the military-style semi-auto reportedly used by the alleged gunman, was not purchased from Gun City. Gun City did not sell him an MSSA, only A-category firearms.
Less than 24 hours after the attacks, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, vowed to make changes to New Zealand's gun laws. Mr Tipple says he fully supports swift and decisive action following the tragedy, but he wasn't interested in any discussions on that issue today.
I totally agree there should be a gun debate, but today is not the day. Please respect me on this. I'm going to leave if these are the only questions you have.
That summed up the theme of Mr Tipple's press conference. When confronted with difficult questions, Mr Tipple would say they were about the gun debate, and he wouldn't answer. He's unapologetic about keeping his Christchurch store open in the days after the attack.
David, is it appropriate to continue to keep the store open just miles away from where 50 people have died days earlier?
I believe it is.
Why is that?
Who's next? Someone who hasn't had a turn.
Earlier in the day, TradeMe sent out a media release stating that they would temporarily be pulling the sale of semi-automatic weapons from its site. Mr Tipple was asked whether Gun City would do the same and if it was looking at pulling advertising.
Will you withdraw AR-15s from sale?
If we are required to by law, we will.
Do it proactively?
Any other questions?
Will you change advertising that shows children alongside firearms on buildings?
We are acting to change that for in the immediate future.
Mr Tipple was also asked about how busy his stores were over the weekend.
There's been a lot of talk about panic buying, and it's a lie. And there's been a number of people wanting to sell their semi-automatic firearms as a result of the incident.
Mr Tipple did say he and his staff sent their sympathies to victims and their families. He takes no responsibility for what happened and stressed that Gun City followed the legal process when selling weapons. He says Gun City will offer any help it can with possible improvements to gun laws in the wake of the attack. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Ben Strang.
You might be able to hear the really sweet sound in the background. It's the students with their own rendition of Lean On Me. I just want to show you something because this is remarkable. If we just go over to the fence here, all these individual links have been made and each has a little message on it. I can find a couple for you here. This one simply says Kia kaha, and further along we've got another one that says they are us. Every piece of paper has a special message written on it, and then they've linked all of them together to make a chain. And I talked to a few of the students and they basically said together we can make a stronger message, and that's kind of what they were wanting to show us by joining these together. And there is, and if Simon just turns and looks down the line here, there's hundreds of them, thousands of individual little messages. Be brave, another one says. There are so many of them, and they are such beautiful, heartfelt messages on every single one. A number of them written in other languages, some in English, obviously some in te reo, and you are one of us. We are sorry this has happened to you. Stay strong, Christchurch, is some of the messages. And so this is what the students wanted, to have a voice, and they have practically wallpapered the fence here in the front of the park, sending that message loud and clear. Now, emergency workers who went to the mosque shootings have spoken out today. It's the first time that we've heard from those people who were on the front line of this, and they say they will never forget the scene of hatred that confronted them. The first call to ambulance services, we know, was taken at 1:44 p.m. on the Friday, and by 1:47 p.m, 6 more calls had been received. Now, ambulance officers have described having to lift up bodies to enable them to get into the mosque, while 111 call takers had to beg desperate family members to stay away from the scene. Now, Kate Newton heard the stories of those workers today, and just a warning, some of the contents of her piece are disturbing.
This was the moment when reliving what happened on Friday became too much for ambulance officer Paul Bennett.
You want to stay sitting here?
No, I don't.
You want to come?
No, I don't. I want to go.
Paul Bennett had just finished explaining the scene he and fellow ambulance crew members found when they arrived at the Deans Avenue Mosque under armed police escort on Friday, a scene of almost indescribable horror.
We tried to get our stretcher into the mosque, but we couldn't because there were fatalities in the way. We ended up having to lift the bodies over top of other bodies onto our stretchers. There was no, and those people were bleeding, and there was a lot of blood. There was a river of blood coming out of the mosque, and that's a scene that you don't forget. It was literally flowing off terracotta tiles.
Mr Bennett worked on the day of the Christchurch earthquakes, but says the mosque shootings was the most horrific scene he's ever witnessed.
The earthquake was something, it's kind of like it was Mother Nature, and you could explain that in your own head. The scene at Deans Ave was about hatred. That's the feeling I got from the Deans Ave site.
His colleagues agreed. St John ambulance officers, 111 call takers and dispatchers had to contain their own emotions as they realised the enormity of what they were dealing with. Spencer Dennehy, who's been working as a call taker for less than a year, had to plead with one woman to stay away from the Linwood Avenue Mosque.
Her husband and her 2-year-old baby were in the Linwood Mosque, so she was very, very emotional and hysterical, so I was trying to be very strong for her, and also she was trying to get to the mosque to save her husband and her baby, so obviously we were trying to tell her to stop because it wasn't safe for her to be there. They did both survive, but they are both in hospital. Yeah, which was a relief to see that. I did think about them all night.
Ms Dennehy says she's only just starting to process what happened. Ambulance officer Karen Jackson says in the midst of all the chaos, everyone became single-minded about what they had to do.
You just click into it and go into a mode and do what you have to do. Other emotions, personal emotions, get blocked out. Even bits of that scene that you can't do anything about actually get blocked out, and you focus your energy on what you can do.
Shift supervisor and intensive care paramedic Jason Watson says despite the chaos that greeted them, emergency staff did an incredible job treating dozens of critically wounded people.
A good half of the patients that I saw go into the back of ambulances I expected to die within an hour, and the fact that only one has is incredible and a plus to the entire Christchurch emergency service community and members of the public that helped.
St John says a specialist psychological team has flown over from Australia to help support staff. That support and St John's existing support will continue for as long as staff need it. Mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Kate Newton tēnei.
Now, we know that a mass burial is expected to take place in Christchurch later this week. The Prime Minister has also said that she anticipates all loved ones will be returned to their family members by Wednesday. Junaid Ismail was killed in Friday's shootings. Today I spoke to his twin brother, Zahid, who survived the shooting, and we spoke outside the business, the dairy that his brother owns.
I just want two things. One is I want him back with us, and the other is I want him buried as soon as I possibly can bury him for the religious belief, and that's it. I don't want any media. I don't want anything to be spun or twisted in what I'm saying. I don't represent anybody, but I want my brother. That's all I'm asking for, and I want him returned. I have already rung Jacinda Ardern's office and left a message to say, can I speak to her directly? Because she is the highest rank of person that can authorise him to be released to our family and for us to go there and verify him as my brother. The coroner just needs that, and I know that because I've done that process with my dad through the hospital. I know the police need to verify that person, and the only people that can do that is me, my mum and my brother and my sister are the closest people. So we should be the first in that list to verify. So then this coroner, that is probably somebody not from Christchurch, won't need to consult dental records or anything. Consult me. I've got his passport, I've got his birth certificate, I've got his 3 children at his home right now. I've got his wife at home right now with us. I've got my brother, my older brother, my sister, my mother, who's inside the shop. We're here. We just want Junaid back. That's all I'm asking. I don't want anything else.
So that is the message you want to get out?
Yes, please. Please tell Jacinda Ardern I would like to speak to her directly, and please make the decision that me, personally, can walk down to the hospital, see my brother, and say, yes, that is Junaid Ismail. If you need his passport, I can bring that with me, and I can tell that directly to the coroner, so then I can sign off all the paperwork so he can be released to me, and we can start our religious processes.
Can you just explain to people how important that is for you?
Very, very. So the people that have passed away, from my understanding personally, this is not what, I might be wrong, if anybody religious that is high of rank, don't listen to what I'm saying and think that I'm saying incorrectly. My personal belief is that we must bury my brother as soon as possible. I believe that this process has made it go longer than we could have, and I just want him back and to make that as quick as possible.
You said to me that this is your brother's business, your family business.
This is where my brother would otherwise be had he not been shot and killed. He would be here right now doing, and that's what I'm trying to do what he would be doing. So then I'm at least maintaining that for Nadia, Adam and Yusuf, his youngest son. That's all I'm doing.
Would you like to say anything about your brother?
My brother is my twin brother. I want him back. He's probably, I would rather that I went than him. I was there.
We can stop.
It's okay. I was there with my wife. I survived. That's all I can say. I'm the naughty twin. He's the better one. And that's how it is. That's all I want to say about my brother.
And that is Zahid Ismail, who simply wants his brother home so he can bury him in a respectful way in keeping with his religion. We will have more from this location near the Deans Avenue Mosque, but for now, back to you in the studio, Alex.
Thank you, Lisa. What a remarkable man. We will be going back live to Lisa later in the program. But coming up on Checkpoint, police are attending a bomb threat. This is new, just in the last few minutes. A bomb threat made by a passenger at Auckland's domestic airport. We will get the very latest to you on that. Kashmir high school students reel from the deaths of 2 students in Friday's terror attack. And more than 1.1 million people sign a petition in Australia to remove Queensland Senator Fraser Anning from their parliament. Before all that, here's Susanna Leatawa with the headlines.
Thank you, Alex. We're going to cross now? Not quite yet. Starting with a recap of this news of the past half hour, the Prime Minister says gun laws will be in place within 10 days. A reform of gun laws will be in place within 10 days of what she calls the horrific act of terrorism. The Green Party joined Labour and New Zealand First for an expanded cabinet meeting to talk reform of gun laws. Jacinda Ardern has announced they made a unified decision today, but will be testing that this week before committing it to law. She says they expect to have the detail finalised by next week's cabinet meeting. Ms Ardern sought to assure gun owners that gun law reform was not targeted at them. She says she wants to remind people they can surrender their guns to police at any time. She says if owners are thinking about it, she encourages them to do so. And Jacinda Ardern has announced an inquiry into several government agencies in the wake of the Christchurch attack. The inquiry will include agencies like SIS, the GCSB, the police, customs and immigration. It will look at the time leading up to the attacks, what the agencies knew and whether the attack could have been prevented. An ambulance officer who treated people at the Deans Avenue Mosque says it was the most horrific scene he has ever attended. Paul Bennett was among the first wave of emergency staff dispatched to the scene of the shootings and says he and fellow paramedics had to move bodies out of the way to get to the injured. Mr Bennett also worked during the Canterbury earthquakes but says the shootings were completely different. 2 patients injured in the mosque attacks were well enough to be discharged from Christchurch Hospital today. There are still 31 patients who are injured remaining in hospital, 9 of whom are critically ill in intensive care. The Canterbury District Health Board says a 4-year-old girl who was transferred to Starship Hospital is still there. Her father also has been transferred to Auckland to be closer to family members, and he remains in a serious but stable condition. Those are the headlines. It's 26 minutes to 6. I'll be back with a news update at 6.
Thanks very much, Susanna. Nona Peltier is here without fail in the Christchurch studio to join us for the business news. We're going to do something a bit different and start with the markets.
Yes, I think we probably should, because we're going to be crossing potentially right in the middle of this. So we'll just get through whatever we have today in business. And it's been an interesting day. It was actually business as usual in the markets. People were active. The volumes were normal for a Monday. And we ended up 42 points to a record close of 9,515. That's an increase of 0.4% this day. And our dollar is trading at a steady level at 68.6 US cents, 96.5 Australian. We've been there for a while, and 51.6 pence. And so that's a lot of the reason there is because there's some expectations that the US Federal Reserve are going to hold interest rates. We've got a lot of news coming up this week. The dairy sector, big day on Wednesday. We also have the economic numbers coming out, and we had some additional information today feeding into that.
Right. Now, the service sector, we had a bit of a boost earlier in the year, but now you're saying that that's slowed down. What's going on there?
Yeah, so early in the year was a big surprise. The service sector grew at quite a sharp pace, and people thought, wow, what is this going to mean? But it's come back quite a bit, and so this is more to what we would say long-term averages, just slightly below, but still expanding. Now, sales dropped back, but orders were still very strong, so we are still looking like an economy that's growing at about a rate of 2.5%. We're going to learn more about that later in the week when we have the economic numbers.
Right.
And,
what else you got there?
Well, I got one more thing. We have time.
We do.
So we've got Metro Performance Glass. That's a company that produces, is a manufacturer of glass products. And they sell not just into the New Zealand market, but also in Australia. The Australian market is causing them some concern. There's been a slowdown there in the housing and multi-family dwelling type apartment buildings, and you name it. They're saying that they're worried about it, and it's going to affect their bottom line somewhat in their financial year, which is ending on March 31st. So it remains to be seen what happens there. That's one thing that they're going to keep a close on. It's a wild card. We've seen this across, Fletcher Building is the same. We've had that from those sectors in New Zealand that have exposure to the Australian market.
Great. Thank you very much, Nona. Nona Peltier there with the latest in the business news. It's exactly 23 minutes to 6 to Dunedin now, where Brenton Tarrant, the accused, lived for about 2 years ahead of Friday's terror attack. Some of those who had interactions with him describe him as a loner, while others say they had no idea what was obviously brewing inside. Our Otago Southland reporter Timothy Brown has more.
For 2 years, Australian citizen Brenton Tarrant lived a seemingly normal life in Dunedin. It was during that time he allegedly planned and prepared for Friday's massacre. Details about his life have begun to emerge, and across the Tasman, his grandmother told 7 News his overseas travel appeared to be where his hateful ideology began to foment.
It's only since he travelled overseas, I think, that boy has changed completely to the boy we knew.
His family spoke of a young man who didn't spend much time outside.
Spent most of his time on computers and learning all the ins and outs of computers and playing games on computers. But I don't think girlfriends were on the agenda. He said getting married was too hard.
He was a qualified personal trainer and worked at a local gym in his hometown of Grafton. All of those characteristics of his earlier life carried over into his time in Dunedin. But in the city they can now be seen in a darker light. It was on computers that it appears his friendships were kept, among the racist underbelly of white supremacists on the 8chan website. In his last post before carrying out Friday's attack, Brenton Tarrant describes those on the anonymous forum as the best bunch of cobbers a man could ask for. He lived in a quiet residential street in Anderson's Bay. Neighbours say they knew little about his life, but Brandon Kinghorn says it isn't uncommon for people to go under the radar there.
Everyone really keeps to themselves, I think. I mean, I know a few people through work, some that live in Everton Road and some just up from us. But other than that, everyone's sort of, their families or they just sort of keep them to themselves. And I don't think we're not divided at all. We're just not connected,
Most struggled to recall interactions with him or seeing his vehicle, a Subaru Legacy station wagon, which was used in the attacks and bought in August 2017 from a Dunedin dealership. One man who did exchange the odd word with him says he spent a lot of time at the gym. The man, who did not wish to be identified, said he seemed nice enough and polite enough, but kept to himself, and no friends or other vehicles were ever seen coming or going from the address. His interactions at the South Dunedin gym he was a member of were also polite, but reserved. One person who works there describes him as a loner with a lot of money, but no job. His membership was paid in full, though he placed it on hold when he travelled overseas last October. A foreigner's registration card shows he travelled to Pakistan, and he spent some time in the north of the country along the border with Afghanistan. In a post online, he describes Pakistanis as the most earnest, kind-hearted and hospitable people in the world. Dunedin's Mayor Dave Cull says the image of a loner is referenced by the fact police seem confident he has no accomplices.
So far as they can ascertain, the person that they have apprehended for the murders was acting on his own and was responsible for the shootings at both mosques in Christchurch.
Mr Cull says the city is struggling to come to terms with the accused gunman's 2-year-long presence there. During his time in Dunedin, he bought 4 A-class firearms online between December 2017 and March 2018. He practiced using them at a local firing range just outside of Milton, about 50 kilometres south of Dunedin. Members of the Bruce Rifle Club have been shaken by the association with Brenton Tarrant and are reeling from claims by a former soldier that the club harboured people with homicidal fantasies. When contacted today, Vice President Scott Williams laughed at that suggestion and said police have told him not to respond to the claims. He said people at the club feel betrayed and used by the accused, and says there were no signs of what would eventuate during the accused's year-long membership. Dave Cull says that's why there are legitimate questions about who the accused has associated with and how they're reacting to what has happened.
The concern, obviously, in the early stages was, well, what if there's a cell? What if he's got accomplices who are just waiting for people to reassemble and, crowds to form at these events, and then they'll have another go.
The Bruce Rifle Club has closed its doors, and Scott Williams says it could be for good. In Dunedin, for Checkpoint, Timothy Brown.
It's 18.5 minutes to 6. One community hit particularly hard by Friday's terror attack is Cashmere High School. 3 of its current students and 1 former student died following Friday's terror attack, and the school's principal and teachers are reeling. As students returned to class today, Cashmere Principal Mark Wilson spoke to visual journalist Logan Church about their loss.
We were in a situation where we had 3 of our students who were at Friday prayers during the terrible incidences, and we can confirm that we've lost 2 of our students, and one of the third student has some gun wounds and is being well cared for in a stable condition in the Christchurch Hospital.
What can you tell us about those 2 students?
The 2 students, Syed Milne is a Year 10 boy. He joined us as a Year 9 student here at the beginning of 2018. He's an awesome kid. I described him at the assembly to his fellow students. He had kind eyes, a big heart, a cheeky smile, and a thick mop of black hair. He loved playing football and also indoor futsal. He was an accomplished goalkeeper. Syed was a member of our school's futsal team that was going to be going to the national tournament in Wellington in the next week. He was studying hard, and he was looking forward to planning to be an engineer or an architect. Hamza Mustaf was the Year 12 boy who we've lost. He joined Cashmere High School midway through 2018. as a Year 11 student. He arrived here in New Zealand from Syria. He and his family had fled the civil war back in their home country. He'd lived in Jordan for about 6 years as a refugee before being accepted into New Zealand. He was an excellent horse rider. He had ridden in equestrian events back in his home countries. He aspired to be a veterinarian, which reflects his love of animals. And he was also working very hard and successfully. He was a great student here at our school. He was a compassionate young man, and despite the fact he hadn't been here for a long time, he'd already quickly developed many friends. Sadly, Hamza's younger brother is the one who is in hospital. Zaid is in hospital with gunshot wounds to his leg. His mother is with him. Adding to the family's trauma, their father has also been killed, and he is also one of the ones dead. We've also got a past pupil, Tariq Omar, who was a student here at our school in 2008 through to 2012, and we know that he has passed away as well. And we have 2 other fathers of students within our school who have been one wounded and another one killed as well. The weekend was perhaps a small blessing in terms of, I think, people's ability to cope. It did allow for friends and families to come together and to spend time together before coming back into school. Schools do provide, I think, a really important healing place where students can come together, sometimes to get away from their families and catch up with their mates, also to be with their teachers who they know and have got strong relationships as well. And I think also schools play an important part in terms of providing some regular routine, and I think research and also from our past experience with earthquakes shows that that type of support for students becomes very valuable in terms of trying to normalise life a little bit more after a traumatic event. And so that I think, you know, our staff here play a really important part, and they understand that role in terms of supporting their students as well.
That's Kashmir High School Principal Mark Wilson speaking to our reporter Logan Church there in Christchurch, right on 14 minutes to 6. I'm Alex Perrottet and you are with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We do have an extended program tonight. We will be on air until 7 p.m. You can tune in on Facebook, on our website rnz.co.nz/checkpoint. Also on Freeview Channel 50 and Freeview Channel 50, Face TV, Sky Channel 83. Send in your feedback. We're keen for that. Text us as usual on 2101. Tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. We're also on email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Now, we are standing by for a press conference with Police Commissioner Mike Bush in Wellington. He will give us the latest briefing on the attacks. In the meantime, Turkish authorities investigating the... Sorry, we're going straight to Mike Bush in Wellington now.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you all again. I'd like to cover off 4 main points today and then open up for some questions at the end of that, which again I will do my best to answer. The first point I want to make is to advise you that this criminal investigation is the largest one ever undertaken by the New Zealand Police in terms of the number of investigators that we have conducting this investigation alongside a number of specialists. We have 250 detectives and specialists right across the country conducting this investigation. And in fact, it is an international investigation with jurisdictions right around the world assisting us with those inquiries. We have on the ground here in New Zealand other law enforcement jurisdictions assisting us. We have the FBI, we have the Australian Federal Police, and of course we have our own partner agencies working with us. The next point I want to make is to be quite definitive. We've spoken about this before, but I want to definitely state that we believe that there was only one attacker responsible for this horrendous event. There were two scenes, as you know, and again I would like to state that we believe absolutely there was only one attacker responsible for this. That doesn't mean there weren't possibly other people in support, and that continues to form a very, very important part of our investigation. I also want to say that the threat level in New Zealand remains high, and you will continue to see for weeks to come high vigilance and high visibility from the New Zealand Police and our emergency service partners to ensure that everyone in New Zealand feels safe. The last point I'd like to make is that I want to thank the public for their absolutely overwhelming positive support to members of the New Zealand Police and our emergency service and other partners who have committed themselves to this response and this investigation. It has been absolutely heartwarming, the commentary that we're getting about our people. Myself and the other heads of those organisations could not be more proud of our people who work every day and every night to keep our communities safe. I'll finish as I always do with a message to the public in terms of if you see anything, please say something. Ring the police if you believe it's urgent, ring 111. If it's not urgent, please continue to ensure that you get in touch with us and pass on whatever information you may have. Thank you.
Why are you so sure there's
That was the New Zealand Police Commissioner Mike Bush there in Wellington giving an update, confirming that there are 250 detectives and senior police working on the investigations, the largest investigation in New Zealand history, as well as receiving international assistance. It's just coming up to 9 minutes to 6. More than 1.1 million people have signed a petition to remove the Queensland Senator Fraser Anning from Parliament after his remarks following the Christchurch mosque massacre. In a video which has gone viral, Mr Anning was egged by a teenager after he linked the attacks to growing fears about Muslims in the community. A bipartisan motion is being put before Parliament to have him expelled. I asked Australian author and commentator Peter Fitzsimons how Australians are reacting.
The view is this is one of ours. One of ours did this. Just everybody is shocked, appalled, grieving over what happened in Australasia. So we grieve for New Zealanders and we grieve for the Islamic community in New Zealand, but we're also deeply embarrassed. There's probably a stronger word than that. That it was one of ours that allegedly did this.
We've seen so many good things, let's face it, shared, so much sorrow expressed on social media, but at the same time we do see people trying to make political points and point score for whether they're one side or the other. But it is political in Australia at the moment, isn't it? Because we've got a senator there who's made very inflammatory comments. Tell us a little bit about Fraser Anning and the response to his comments.
Fraser Anning is a rolled gold disgrace. He is an embarrassment to our nation. He came in on the One Nation ticket. I think he got 17 or 18 primary votes, so there were 17 people north of the Tweed in Queensland who said he's our guy, but he came in on the One Nation ticket. So he inherited that position from, basically came in on Pauline Hanson's coattails. So Pauline Hanson is the leader of One Nation, and she has a track record of picking disgraceful people who then disgrace Australia. And he left. Once he took up his position, he left One Nation. In the wake of the catastrophe in Christchurch, he put out he put out his views that it was all the fault. I mean, you just can't believe it. Not the fault of white supremacists, not the fault of horrible racists, but it was the fault of the Islamic community themselves. It's just like you don't even know where to begin. And as we speak, I'm writing a piece about a fellow that's known as Egg Boy. So Egg Boy is the 17-year-old who came up behind Fraser Anning the following day, and he had in his right hand an iPhone, in his left hand an egg, and he comes up behind him, and without violence, spluttered us against the back of his head. Should he's become the real great talking point in Australia. Because is he a hero? Is he a larrikin? Should he have been arrested, etc.? And what then happened was, Fraser Anning lashed out twice at him, but then Fraser Anning's bother boys, these heroes, throw this kid to the ground, put him in a vicious headlock. I mean, you heroes. You bloody heroes. Good on you. Did you hold him down, mate? Did you really think he was dangerous with that egg? I mean, I just look at it and I don't know, my ancient football instincts bristle. You say also this is not political, and I want to choose my remarks carefully here because I'm very aware that I'm speaking in New Zealand about New Zealand politics. But I just want to, I don't understand the ins and outs of your politics in New Zealand and Labor and Nationals and the rest. But I just do want to record, I wrote a piece yesterday, how much so many Australians admire, and I want to take this out of the political sense, just forget the left and right and all that. But your Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, the way I want to just record how deeply Australians admired her leadership, the words she used in that press conference afterwards, her steely resolve, her calm, and the magnificence of her words when she said, to the people that did this, you chose us, but we utterly condemn and reject you. And there's been a strong feeling in Australia that just that kind of leadership, that rising above any sort of, there was no political point scoring from her. It was just rising above, saying this is not us. And how many Australians just admire that kind of leadership.
And talking about taking leadership and utterly rejecting what is wrong, there's a petition there in Australia. I think it might be led by the Greens to expel Fraser Anning from Parliament. Tell us about that and tell us if it's possible.
Okay. It's led by the people. So that was started by a woman. I don't know what her political stripes are. I don't care. But after Fraser Anning disgraced himself, there was a petition launched on change.org saying, get this guy out of the Parliament. These are not the exact words, but basically get this man out of Australian politics. He's a disgrace to us. In 2 days, 1 million people at about 20 past 10 last night, it cracked 1 million. It's now over 1.1, 1.15. And what it is Australians coming together to say this brand of toxic hate speech, hate politics is not us. It does not represent who we are, and we want this man out of the Parliament. Will we get this man out of the Parliament? Highly unlikely. The democratic process, but there will be, Queenslanders who are good people are horrified that, Fraser Anning on 19 primary votes, 17 primary votes, whatever it was, so disgraces the position he holds. And the thing that he put out, the press release that he put out, was on the letterhead of the Australian Parliament. This was within hours of the catastrophe in Christchurch taking place.
Peter Fitzsimons there in Australia. And Senator Fraser Anning has held another press conference today saying he was defending himself when punching in the face the youth who broke an egg on his head. His seat in the Australian Senate will be contested at the federal election, which must be held by the 18th of May. Just gone after 3 minutes to 6. Around the world, vigils, prayers and protests have been taking place. Lydia Batham's taken a look at how people from across the globe have responded to Friday's attack.
Uniting against hate and Islamophobia. Outside the New Zealand consulate in Tel Aviv, Muslims and Jews came together in prayer. For Israeli Rabbi Noah Mazur, it was important to take a stand against violence.
It doesn't matter our beliefs and faith and origin, and we just want to be able to live and not to kill each other for who we are.
At the Vatican, Pope Francis expressed his sorrow for the victims during his Sunday address, calling on the thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square to join in prayer and gestures of peace. In India, many Muslims demonstrated against the attack, some loudly, while others, including Sumitra, peacefully held signs condemning it.
Wherever a terror attack happens, we should condemn it. We should stand together. We should give strength to each other.
And as the names of the victims become known, the people of their homelands are expressing their sadness. 9 of the 50 killed were originally from Pakistan, and vigils have taken place across the nation, with candles lit and even funeral prayers said. Many other countries have expressed their condolences with light displays across buildings and monuments, from a footbridge in Jakarta, Indonesia, lit up in red, white and blue, to a silver fern being projected across the Sydney Opera House. Others took a more solemn approach, with New York's Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower in France turning off their lights in a show of respect for the dead and injured. For Checkpoint, Lydia Batham.
Thanks, Lydia. And just to take us out to the news, we are going live back to Christchurch now to listen to people singing at one of the vigils. And we do have pictures there of students gathering there at what looks like Hagley Park. We can see Lisa in the picture. Just for those who are tuning in, we did have them singing before. It seems that they are praying now in silence. There's a tree with lots of flowers around it and a group of students on one knee, genuflecting as it were. They're getting up now after they've offered some moments of prayer there in front of the flowers. There's coloured candles that are lit. And a huge group of people circling around. Our reporter Logan Church and Lisa Owen in and out of the picture there. They'll be speaking to people, and we will be going back to people in Christchurch, and Lisa will have other people that she's spoken to there after the news in the last hour as well, just looking up at the pictures there. But in the last hour, the Prime Minister confirming that there will be gun changes to the laws on guns, and we'll hear more of that in a week's time.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leata tēnei. An inquiry into several government agencies in the wake of the Christchurch mosque attacks has been confirmed by the Prime Minister. But Jacinda Ardern has emerged from a lengthy cabinet meeting with no specific details of changes to gun laws the government intends to make. She says she will release more information before cabinet meets again next week. Ms Ardern says some detail still needs to be worked through and the government is moving as swiftly as it can. She denies there is any division in cabinet about the plan agreed to in principle today, saying it will just take some time to work through changes to a complex law. Ms Ardern says the inquiry will include the SIS, the GCSB, the police, customs and immigration.
The purpose of this inquiry is to look at what all relevant agencies knew or could or should have known about the individual and his activities, including his access to weapons and whether they could have been in a position to prevent the attack. It will look at whether there are any impediments to the sharing of information, such as legislative or intelligence sharing challenges.
Jacinda Ardern has also reminded people they can volunteer their weapons to police for destruction if they wish, and of the 1737 mental health helpline for people distressed by Friday's events. She says the Cabinet will name a date for a National Memorial Day, but that won't be done this week. The police say the threat level in New Zealand remains high. The Police Commissioner Mike Bush, addressing media at a news conference in Wellington, said it is the largest police investigation in our country's history, involving 250 detectives and specialists. Mr Bush says they have confirmed definitively only one person was responsible for the attack, but they are investigating to check there are no further threats. The Deputy Police Commissioner says they're aiming to have all 50 bodies of those killed on Friday released by Wednesday. Wally Homaha says the first body to have all identification processes completed was released last night, but the family is waiting for the body of another relative to be released.
We had the first release of a deceased person, official release last evening. However, that person was not released into the family as a result of another family member having been killed. So the desires and the wishes of the family at this point is to wait until we've finished the post-mortem with that person, and both will be released together.
Wally Homaha says they are hoping to have both Christchurch mosques open by Friday following karakia and blessings this morning. Families are being asked if they would like to opt for a group or private burial. Most are choosing a group burial, which could happen as soon as Friday. All available operating theatres at Christchurch Hospital were running today, providing surgery for the wounded. It had to postpone a significant number of other planned operations. Our health correspondent Karen Brown reports.
The Canterbury District Health Board says the acute operating theatres have been in use for those needing follow-up surgery or procedures because of the complicated nature of their injuries. It's thanking those whose planned surgery has been delayed to free up theatre space and surgical teams. The DHB also says Christchurch Hospital remains extremely busy and is urging the public to continue to see their family doctor first for all non-urgent care. It says while the hospital has good capacity, many staff have worked long hours and will be profoundly affected by the tragedy. 31 wounded patients remain in hospital, 9 of them critically ill in intensive care. Ko Karen Brown, TNA.
Online scammers are using the Christchurch shootings to try to steal money. The government cyber security agency CERT and Westpac both say they have had reports of scams in the past few days. Brooke Jenner reports.
This afternoon, Westpac has warned an email scam under its branding is circulating, asking for donations for the victims of the mosque attacks. The cyber security agency CERT says these scams are common in the wake of tragedies like the mosque attacks. CERT says the scammers are asking for money through text messages, emails and fraudulent donation sites. In a statement, the United States Department of Homeland Security says US-based contributors are also being targeted. People are being urged to check donation links are from a trusted source before offering any card details. Brooke Jenner, Aho.
Australia is assessing the risk posed by right-wing extremism in the wake of the Christchurch shootings. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is chairing a meeting of his National Security Committee to decide whether Australia should raise its terror threat level. The suspected gunman, Brenton Tarrant, is an Australian citizen and grew up in the New South Wales town of Grafton. Earlier today, counter-terrorism police conducted raids and executed search warrants on homes in the wider region, including the home of his sister. A movie about a terrorist attack in India, Hotel Mumbai, is being pulled from all cinemas in New Zealand. Icon Film Distribution said it is suspending the film after speaking to local cinema partners. On Friday, Icon Films suspended all advertising for the film, which shows the aftermath of a terror attack in which 31 people died after terrorists stormed a hotel in 2008. It will be suspended until March the 28th. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 6. The Silver Ferns will be part of a world first when they face the New Zealand men's invitational netball team in preparation for this year's World Cup. With no Tiny Jameson Trophy Series scheduled, coach Nolene Taurua has orchestrated a series involving the historic match against the men, as well as playing the Fiji Pearls and an All-Stars team in June. Taurua, who has faced men's teams as a player in the past, says she wanted to play the best before entering the pinnacle event in July.
They've always been there, even since I've been a player as well. It's about getting quality competition at the highest level that we possibly can going into the Worlds, you know, overall, which I think should be a priority not only of the Silver Ferns but also, you know, Netball New Zealand. And I'm speaking this purely for myself. It's about raising the profile of our sport.
The Wallabies will play a test against Samoa in Sydney to round off their preparations for this year's Rugby World Cup. The match on September the 7th will be the fifth and final match of Australia's build-up to the World Cup, which starts in Japan later that month. Australia have played 17th ranked Samoa 5 times, winning the first 4 before being upset 32-23 in Sydney in their last clash in 2011. And the young Canadian tennis player who rose to prominence in Auckland earlier this year has produced another stunning result. Playing as a wild card, 18-year-old Bianca Andreescu has won her first WTA title at the BNP Paribas Open in California. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, we share some of the music RNZ concert listeners have been requesting to soothe our broken hearts. Peter Lamp looks back on the weekend's sport, a handy distraction at times, especially the 2019 Rural Games hosted by Palmerston North. We'll get lost in the Amazon jungle, and we'll be in touch with some of those heading to and from tonight's vigils for the victims of the mosque attacks. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow for Northland to Taranaki, also Coromandel Peninsula, Taupo and Taumaranui. Fine with cloudy periods and a few showers. Bay of Plenty, fine with cloudy periods and a few showers developing later today. South Taranaki to Wellington, also Taihape and Wairarapa. Fine with morning cloud for Wellington and Wairarapa. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine with areas of cloud, isolated showers developing in Gisborne overnight. For Marlborough, Nelson, Buller and Westland, mainly fine, however areas of evening and morning cloud with isolated showers about the ranges. Canterbury, areas of cloud, isolated showers inland this afternoon and evening, and patchy morning drizzle about the coast tomorrow. For Otago and Southland, fine with areas of cloud, isolated showers mainly in the afternoon and evening. Fiordland, cloudy periods with a few showers clearing about the coast tomorrow. And at the Chatham Islands, cloudy with drizzle tonight and tomorrow morning. It's coming up to 9 minutes past 6. You're with RNZ National.
Thanks very much, Susanna. Welcome back to Checkpoint. Alex Perrottet in the Auckland studio. Lisa Owen is live in Christchurch. We'll go to her shortly. We're both with you right through to 7 p.m. tonight, an extended version of the program. If you've just joined us in the past half an hour, Police Commissioner Mike Bush has told media that the security threat to New Zealand remains high and the investigation into Friday's terror attack which killed 50 and injured others is the largest one ever undertaken in New Zealand. 250 staff are on the job. Now, there have been other developments today. Gun City owner David Tipple has confirmed that his Christchurch store sold alleged gunman Brenton Tarrant 4 A-category firearms legally. Trade Me has today put a halt on the sale of semi-automatic weapons and parts. And just one body so far has been released and to families, but all bodies are expected to be released by Wednesday. Ambulance officers have spoken for the first time today about the scene of hatred. We earlier heard them recount what they said was the river of blood which came out of the Deans Avenue Mosque on Friday. Counter-terror police in Australia raided homes in New South Wales. That's including one of the gunman's sister. That's all part of an investigation into the attacks. They are assisting New Zealand police. So we will be going soon to Lisa Owen in Christchurch. She's been spending the day speaking with survivors. But firstly, we're going to go to the Parliament where Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced just in the last half an hour a formal inquiry into Friday's massacre. Our political editor, Jane Patterson, is in the gallery studio and joins me now. Jane, tell us about this inquiry. What have you heard so far?
So basically the actual type of inquiry hasn't yet been determined, but Ms Ardern says one will be held, and it will be into the agencies, the SIS, the GCSB, Police, Customs and Immigration, and basically it's going to look at the timeline running up to the Christchurch attacks, whether Brenton Tarrant had been made known to any of these agencies, whether the attacks could have been prevented, and this inquiry will go right across all 5 agencies, so it is going to be in depth, but it will be still a little bit of time before we know exactly what it will look like, for example, a Royal Commission versus a ministerial inquiry.
OK, and the Prime Minister did say that all those 5 agencies or departments all agree and consent to it. I think you've got statements there from the GCSB and the SIS. What have they said?
That's right, some interesting statements, Alex, that have just landed, and both agencies say that they welcome the inquiry. Now, the SIS has said that they are focused on supporting the police in its important investigation and also on mitigating the risks to New Zealanders posed by possible revenge or copycat attacks. And they've set up basically a 24-hour system to keep on top of all of that. Now, another thing that the statement says is the person charged with murder has not ever been brought to the attention of the NZSIS and is not known to the SIS or Australian counterparts. And it goes on to say over the last month, the SIS has increased its effort to obtain a better picture of the threat posed to New Zealand by far-right extremist groups, and that over recent years it's received a number of tips from the public concerned about the activity of some groups. Now, the GCSB also says it had not collected or received from partners any relevant intelligence ahead of the terrorist attacks. And remember, the GCSB is the more global intel electronic-based agency, but it also says that intelligence and security agencies don't currently have the legal authority, technical means or resources to actively monitor all online activity in New Zealand, and that it's something that agencies around the world are grappling with in terms of the challenges of encryption and closed online communities.
Yeah, it's been a debate, hasn't it, for ages. I think that the UK Parliament had a conversation with some of the social media the big companies there to see whether encrypted messages could be spied upon, but that were knocked back. And well, obviously there's going to be a long debate here about that kind of thing. The other major topic tonight was gun reforms. The Prime Minister said there was unanimous, in principle, agreement to change the laws. She didn't say what they would be. We'll hear more about that in a week. Do you have a hint or any inside word about the banning of semi-automatics?
She would not go into any details, and the post-Cabinet briefing really has just come to a close. The Cabinet meeting ran very long this afternoon. Now, the Greens, the confidence and supply partner of Labor, were in the Cabinet meeting. They would not normally be there, along with the coalition partner New Zealand First. So all three governing parties around the table this morning and this afternoon. And Ms Ardern said that they have all agreed in principle to the proposals that she's not yet talking about. Now, New Zealand First leader and Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters accompanied her to Cabinet, and he was, to post-Cabinet, the media briefing. Now, he was asked, do you agree? New Zealand First has tended to be much more conservative on any gun control laws than other parties like Labor. He said, look, the fact I'm here, it was a Cabinet decision. He is saying that there is unity, and in fact I would suggest that his presence at the podium beside Ms Ardern would suggest that they are in agreement. And I would say that the Greens, who have really wanted to tighten up on gun control laws, they would have no problem at all agreeing with any proposals. But look, they're going to be around the availability, potentially the importation, the issues that we've been discussing for the last few days, but also the government sounds like it's going to have to sort out or figure out exactly how it's going to do it, how it's going to make those changes within potential limitations of the existing legislation, just in terms of practical terms.
Right, yes, and of course very, very telling words there from Winston Peters, signifying that there are going to be some very significant changes in the law. Thank you very much. Jane Patterson, our political editor there in our gallery studio in Wellington. We are going to cross live now back to Lisa Owen in Christchurch.
Hi Alex, I'm not far from the mosque on Deans Avenue where this happened on Friday. You can probably hear beside me an impromptu prayer circle has set up. I just want to walk a little bit closer so you can hear the sweet sound of them singing, and it's kind of cutting through the air here as the sun goes down. This is an impromptu gathering. Not everybody in this circle knows each other. They've just linked hands and they've said a prayer, and when people want to join them they just welcome them to the group and someone starts singing. Let's get a little bit closer so you can hear. A different person will start singing. They were singing Hallelujah before, and they just break out in song. Someone will say a prayer or a few words, and they've been here for hours. They're circling a tree where flowers and, well, banners and messages have been left for students of Kashmir High School. And you know that that school has been hit particularly hard by what happened on Friday. Now, we know today we've been told that most of the families of the victims of the mosque attacks have opted for a group burial, which is likely to take place later this week, with only one body so far having been released to the families. Now, family and friends and supporters have been stopping by the Memorial Park Cemetery in Bromley, where the council is preparing the ground there for later this week. Now, Matthew Tunison spent much of the day outside that cemetery. This is his report.
Limping badly, Mohammed Afroz and his 3 friends went to check over the site where many of the 50 victims will be buried. His leg was badly injured in the panic to escape from the Al Noor Mosque near Hagley Park. His friend, Mohammed Akholuddin, was at the Linwood Mosque and also escaped the killing. Many of their friends did not. Mr. Afroz says he can't go home because he can't bear to see the belongings of his 2 flatmates, who were both killed.
The one Somalian kid is 3 years old. I think he just has 3-4 shots on him. He was suddenly dead, and one of my flatmate, his name is Arib. He was dying on the incident. I saw everything there, but I can't do any help. And on the emergency exit, everything, people are breaking and they're just going out. People are very scary and they just praying, just calling Allah, Allah. Yeah, the room was, we staying in the King Street, the room was very quiet now. When we entering, we can't go there. We are just staying there, we can't sleep there because the two people they are not with us.
Mr. Akholodin hopes the burials will bring some closure.
Not slept in the 24 hours. Yesterday night I was with my friends, they take me their home and I was with them, I sleep and they have the dinner with me, so still I'm calm and relaxed right now, yeah.
Good to have your brothers to support you.
Yeah, I have my friends very close to me. Yeah, and the Red Cross people, they are supporting and the police are very kind, and the hospital I was there for the first 48 hours in the hospital. I never went to home, and this brother also was there. And actually I find very calm when the Prime Minister came. I feel very happy about that. And I stay, calm. I was panicked till then, before.
The two young men are from India and don't have family here, so have been leaning on each other and their other friends. They both expressed huge amounts of gratitude to the police, medical staff, government and New Zealand public. Latif Alabi, the assistant imam at the Linwood Mosque, says he's unsure whether all the dead will be buried at the cemetery, as some families may want their loved ones sent back to their country of birth.
Probably we're trying to form groups, like this group take care of 3-4 bodies, this group take care of 3-4 bodies, and something like that.
Andrew Macbeth lives opposite the cemetery.
I was just here to see if my friend was come down.
Yeah.
Omar, he's dead, lost his dad. So sad. The thing is that we got to watch it all now too. We got to watch all the bodies come in and everyone come up. And we can't move. It's surreal. The whole thing's just surreal.
Kauthar Abulabin, who escaped the massacre at the Al Noor Mosque, wanted to come to the place she's going to lay so many of her friends to rest.
It's good to the world to see what's happened, because people around the world, they thought we are terrorists. They said, you deserve what you get, so you done this for people, so now it's some people done it for you. This is good to tell the people we came to New Zealand looking for peace. I will not change my opinion about New Zealand. It's my country and the people here is very nice. They supported me. I have lots of support, lots of love, lots of kindness from all of the New Zealand people here.
This afternoon, Deputy Police Commissioner Wally Homaha said they're aiming to have all of the bodies released by Wednesday. He says one body was released last night, but the family is waiting for a second body of another victim to be released before they move forward with the burial. The president of the Federation of Islamic Associations of New Zealand, Mustafa Farouk, says families have been given options for private burials or sending the bodies back to their home countries, but most have opted for a group burial.
They have already, a number of these families decided that they want their own loved ones to be buried at the same time, because they appreciate the fact that this is not only something now that involves our community or our country alone. Everybody would like to know what is happening, so they have decided to allow their loved ones to be buried at the same time.
Police are hoping to have the mosques open by Friday, the holy day for the Muslim community. Karakias and blessings took place at both mosques this morning with community leaders. From Christchurch for Checkpoint, call Matthew Tunis and Tēnei.
Well, there has been a rainbow of school uniforms here today as a number of the young people came down for the vigil here in the park. Christchurch Boys High, Girls High, Rangiora, Cashmere, of course, and Avonside, just some of the uniforms that we spotted down here with the students paying their respects. Today I spoke to Hanan Al-Adim, who was in Melbourne. She was waiting for a flight back to Christchurch when she learnt what had happened at the mosque. Now, her husband, Dr. Amjad Hamid, worked as a cardiologist at Christchurch Hospital for 20 years, and he had just got a new job in Taranaki, and he was among those who perished.
I tried to call him, he didn't answer. I messaged him, he didn't answer, and so that's when I heard about it. I heard about it in Melbourne when I was waiting for my flight to Christchurch.
And when did you know that he wasn't going to be coming home?
Actually, when I arrived in Christchurch, Amjad's niece and her husband, with my boys, they picked me up from the airport, and I asked to go straight to the mosque because I wanted to make sure that he wasn't there. I went there to look for his car, but of course the area was, cordoned. We couldn't have access. So I walked along the side, in the park to look for his car. I couldn't see it. I know the spot that he always parked his car in. It wasn't there, and I thought maybe he didn't go to the mosque, but I had doubts, but where else would he be? So nobody saw him. Nobody. He always went in quietly, prayed quietly and left immediately after the prayer. So I'm not sure if, I haven't heard, all the people who we asked, they didn't see him.
And what have you been told by the officials, by the police or by anyone about when you might be able to bury your husband?
I think they said that the bodies will be released within, last night they said that there will be one body to be released last night, and within the next 2 to 3 days they will release the rest of the bodies, and probably the mass burial will be on Fridays, but we're not sure. We are still not sure.
The not knowing, Hanan, how are you coping with that?
The uncertainty is horrible. I can't describe my emotions. It's all locked in.
What do you mean by that? When you say it's all locked in?
I still can't believe what had happened. I still can't believe that he's gone. I heard about the 4 critical cases at the ICU, and I thought, and that they were unidentified, and I had hope. But
you wanted one of them to be him?
At least, yeah. Even if he's seriously injured, I hoped, but I asked my victim support, the policeman, and he said that those critically injured cases were identified. So, yeah, it's hard. I had hope, but it's. I don't think he's alive. I don't think he's made it. I don't think so. The whole process. It's telling me that he is not here. He's not with us. He's not alive.
This must be so horribly hard for your family, but more so you were coming home thinking...
I know.
Oh, Hanan. It's all right, we're stopping. You thought you were coming home to see your husband?
After the meeting at Hagley College, I came home. That was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I...
Ja, we're still going.
All of them were...
Here in front of this memorial we can see a tree. It's got some red hearts cut out from crepe paper there. There is a message on it, a really heartfelt message that says, "We wish we knew your name so we could write it on your heart. We wish we knew your favourite song, what made you smile and what made you cry. But we have made you a heart." There is a heart for each of the victims killed in the attacks on Friday. Today I spoke to father of three, Tariq Chinafa, who came to Christchurch from Algeria in 2003. He came here to work for a specialist halal company, and he arrived at the mosque here on Deans Ave at about 1:30 on Friday, and he took up his usual seat underneath the window.
Yeah, just like bum, and then a machine gun. This is powerful sound, so just like, oh my God, just like I have to do what next. I know someone is going to come to kill us, but in my mind, I don't know how many, 1 or 2 or 3. Just when you hear the machine gun, you don't know how many one he's shooting. If you know just one, you know, you act, maybe I go out and then waiting, the gun is gonna finish. But when you hear like you told like, too many, they're coming with the gun, so just you have to run for your life.
Did you see him?
No, actually, no, I didn't see him because there's no time for go back because the sound of the machine gun doesn't stop.
Tariq sat in the same spot every time he went to prayer. He's always feared that one day the worst would happen.
And then I realized someone is come to kill us. So just the window, just the glass window, just beside me. So just I smashed the window all of my body. I broke the glasses, so I got out from this one, and then I ran for my life. And then I had behind me, I'm running, all blood, my face, because I make scratch here in the hair, here, and my feet here, here. So I see the blood, but I don't know when the glasses when it hit me. So I heard the kids behind me, horrible sound here. I heard behind me the kids crying, and the sound of the machine gun is powerful. And I know there's going to be a lot of casualty.
As Tariq smashed through, glass sliced his left arm and legs, filling his socks with blood.
This is my area, pray every Friday in this area near to the window.
So, Tariq, you chose that seat because it was next to a window.
Next to the window.
And you believed that one day you would have to break
exactly.
out of that window.
This is my mind. I act very quick because I know what happened. Some people, they didn't act because they thought someone playing or someone just like joking or something like that. But me, I was preparing, so my mind straight away, I know someone is come to kill us. This is the time's coming. So I saw the window. I did. I broke the window with all my body. I didn't know with the hand, no with my feet, like rugby attack. All my body, my hand, my body, just boom, one shot, the window out. And then the God creator, he gave me this power. If you told me now, do it, I can do it. So too many people, they escape from this window.
They followed you through the window?
Yeah, of course. When someone is like panicking, he will say some, you have to look in some hole to get out, because someone with a machine gun behind you is not a joke. When he got you, you die. And then straight away you see that I'm running, I see just my kids front to me, my wife, you're gonna leave behind me. So you're gonna digest right now, because powerful shooting. And he doesn't choose adult or just anyone, kids, anyone in front to him, just shooting like a game.
Tariq, in just his socks, ran bleeding to safety.
So I just said jump the wall, and then another fence, house, I don't know this house, is neighbor house, near to the park, mosque park. And then I made it to the next street, behind Dean Ave. And then just the people coming out, what it is, and please, can I call the police, someone is shooting in the mosque. So one old man, he told me, I'm already dead. I told him, thank you very much. And then just like car passing like that, someone he coming to pray, but he didn't make it, he come late with it. And then I told him, can I stop, please? Can you take me to the hospital? She told me, yeah, yes. So I jumped in the car. He told me, what's going on, brother? I told him, someone is shooting in the mosque. And then just he drive me to the emergency.
It was many anxious hours before his wife and 3 kids knew he was alive.
And the kids crying. I was crying inside. My kids and my mom, my wife, the kids, they've been shot inside. Just horrible. This is what I'm, today, this 3rd day, I didn't sleep well. Just like, when I'm tired, my eyes just close and then I did in my head inside.
You keep seeing it?
Yeah, I keep seeing it, yeah. Doesn't want to go.
Were there many children there on that day?
Too many. And maybe some of them dying. One baby girl, just 2 years or 3 years, 3 bullets. Imagine, they took her to the Auckland. If she survives, it's a miracle.
Tarek, do you know who of your friends have died yet? Do you know, are you still waiting?
I know half of them. I know half of them. One, he's a father of my friend, he's working with me. He's from Afghan, Haji Dawood, Allah rahmah. So, yeah, he's every Friday there, and he live here more than 50 years. His grandfather, all his generation here, it's like 3 generations here. Yeah.
Your heart must be breaking.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same anymore.
And that is Tariq Janafa, father of 3, who managed to break a window and escape from the mosque that is just down the road from here. Today we've witnessed so many random acts of kindness from the students here giving out free hugs and free cookies to those people who needed them, to the people who told us this with their stories with such strength and dignity. But we will leave you here at Hagley Park now. Back to you in the studio, Alex.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Lisa Owen there in Hagley Park in Christchurch. Just confirming we will be with you right up to 7 o'clock this evening. Coming up before then, the new normal. A Christchurch social worker and counsellor talks about the impact of the terror attack on children who are still impacted by the earthquakes. Independent Queensland Senator Fraser Anning refuses to apologise for offensive comments he made after the Christchurch terror attack. And Turkish authorities investigate the travels of the accused Christchurch gunman. Plenty more coming up before 7. Get in touch with your feedback on the text 2101. You can tweet us as well as get in touch on email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. First, here's Paul Brennan with the headlines.
Thank you, Alex. The Prime Minister has confirmed there will be an inquiry into several government agencies following the Christchurch mosque attacks. But Jacinda Ardern says she will release more information about proposed changes to the gun laws next week. She says the inquiry will include the SIS, the GCSB, the police, customs and immigration. Police Commissioner Mike Bush has told reporters the threat level in New Zealand remains high. He says this is the largest police investigation in the country's history, involving 250 detectives and specialists. Mr. Bush says they have confirmed definitively there was only one person responsible for Friday's attack. Most families of the victims of the mosque shootings are choosing to have their loved ones buried in a group burial. The Deputy Police Commissioner says they're aiming to have all 50 bodies of those killed on Friday released by Wednesday. And Wally Haumaha says they're hoping to have both Christchurch mosques open by Friday, following karakia and blessings this morning. The Canterbury District Health Board says the acute operating theatres at Christchurch Hospital have been running today for those needing follow-up surgery because of the complicated nature of their injuries. It had to postpone a significant number of other planned operations to free up theatre space and surgical teams. 31 wounded patients remain in hospital, 9 of them critically ill in intensive care. Online scammers are using the Christchurch mosque shootings to try to steal money. The government's cyber security agencies CERT and Westpac both say they've had reports of scams in the past few days. Westpac says an email is circulating under its branding. CERT says these scams are common in the wake of such tragedies. Australia is assessing the risk posed by right-wing extremism, with the National Security Committee deciding whether the country should raise its terror threat level. The accused gunman is an Australian citizen and was raised in the New South Wales town of Grafton. And 3 days on from the shootings, Christchurch is trying to establish some sense of normality. Schools across the city were locked down for more than 3 hours on Friday. Concerts and rugby matches were cancelled, and the CBD was largely empty for much of the weekend. And those are the news headlines.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's 22 and a half minutes to 7 today. All schools, apart from Hagley College, which is acting as a welfare centre, reopened. The Education Ministry sent 200 counsellors, expert in dealing with refugees and migrants, to help with those who are struggling to cope. The Christchurch branch of PricewaterhouseCoopers, which lost a staff member, remained closed. And Air New Zealand, which also lost an engineer, was offering counselling to its staff. For many, the full weight of what has happened is only now starting to sink in. Conan Young visited the Linwood Mosque cordon and started by asking people how they were getting on.
The cordon has become an unofficial place for Linwood residents to leave messages and flowers honouring those who died. Julie McCloy, who works at The Loft, a one-stop shop for social services including counselling, says it feels very much like the early days after the 2011 earthquakes.
Like once again, everything's going to be different. Things like that are out of your control. Sort of that loss, I guess, of another little bit of innocence.
The Loft opened early this morning in case people needed support today.
We thought it was either going to be a lot of people come in today or people staying at home. And so today, what we've seen so far, I think, is that it's quiet and that might pack up during the week.
Julie McCloy believes the shootings will lead to some serious soul-searching in Christchurch.
We've had lots and lots of new people come into our community in the last 8 years to help post-earthquake. And have we done enough to be open and absorbing everybody? I don't know.
But she believes that out of Friday's horror, Christchurch will end up being a more united city.
So in that way, I think it's going to have a really positive effect. But again, then for different parts of the community, just like one of the staff members we were talking to, feeling very vulnerable about where they go to worship and things like that, which is, horrible. Yeah.
Michelle Pierre works for an agency providing positive experiences for people with mental health problems and is expecting a big workload over the coming weeks and months. She has this advice for people who feel they aren't coping.
Just take baby steps, a little bit of happiness in your life, Go for a walk along the beach, be together with friends. The best thing that you can do is have your friends around you and be happy, do something be kind to yourself.
Washington DC native Dylan Nunn is about to return home after travelling around the country for months. He helped with a mural that people around the city have been adding to each day since the shootings.
I knew that this banner would be perfect to allow people to write some words that really meant a lot to them, and words that would mean a lot to others reading it, and words that would mean a lot to the victims. So we brought it to Hagley Park on Saturday, had hundreds of people sign it, and left it there for the full entire day. And I've just been bringing it to vigils like all throughout the city.
He says it's a great way to bring people together.
And that's what's important, is that we can still connect and don't stay in our homes and are not afraid of going out. Being from the States, this is not the first shooting that I've, been close to, and for us to hide and cancel events, that's what they want. So it's really important that we come together.
Dylan Nunn is now looking for a permanent home for the banner. Kei o te tahi ahau mō te hotaka o te ahi nei, ko Conan Young tēnei.
Dr. Blair Sterling is a Christchurch social worker and counsellor whose organisation worked with children after the earthquakes there in 2010 and 2011. He was out of Christchurch at the time of the mosque shooting, but told Lisa Owen today the terror attack has compounded an already anxious community.
It's trauma on trauma, it's a trigger. And people will respond differently. Some will be taken right back to the original traumas that they've faced. And it's a bugger, to be honest. It's just, how do you express that? We've been knocked so many times and people are strong, but, there's always a top of the cliff for people, and it's these sorts of things that put you off it.
You talked about your own child.
Yeah.
So what happened on Friday?
So on Friday, I just walked out of the funeral, got a text to say what was going on, that the city was in lockdown. We've been through this stuff before with parents trying to get to their children and information. We found out that he was in lockdown, his mother couldn't get to him. He had friends that were able to text their parents, so we heard, but he spent 4 hours on the floor in a classroom with the curtains closed, dark.
And how do you know he's all right? Or how do you know when he's not all right?
Well, that's really difficult. He seems to be coping at the moment. He seems to be making light of it. But that could change. That could change. His biggest thing at the time was how boring it was, but it hasn't really sunk in for him. And nor should it really. He needs to know he's safe, and he needs to know that it's okay. But it just brings back the memories for a lot of these kids. And he's a pretty, he's an ADHD kid, so to have him lying down for 4 hours is just about an impossibility. But what about the kids that are there in those situations who are Quake kids, and they suffer from anxiety and stress? This will just, it's just, and how do you work with that? One of the big issues I've seen is, as parents we always like to say, it's a safe place, but actually I think one of the lessons in Christchurch is actually the world isn't a safe place. Not just this event, but whether it's a natural disaster or whatever. And sometimes in the Western world, I think we're a bit foolish to think that we actually control everything. And I think we need to get back to some good basics. We always see that post-earthquake, these basic values come out, but why does it take an event like this for a disaster? It should be there all the time.
What is on your arm?
On my arm is a tattoo that my sons and I got as soon as we heard the news. And we got it Saturday, and it says stand in English, and we wanted the Arabic word for together, and we were intentional about making sure there's the English and the Arabic to show the relationship and today's date, and we've done that. So it's a commitment to have nothing to do with any sort of racial attitudes, whether that's just a slide comment at the Chinese driver that cuts you off or whatever, and to always remember this, not let it wilt with time and disappear, but actually keep it forefront for us as a family, and to say, hey, we're not going to put up with this. And when I say put up with it, I don't mean just this incident, I mean the violence that goes right through our society in a whole lot of areas, whether it's violence against women, bullying in the workplace, violence against children. Our statistics are terrible. There's a dark underbelly in this country of aggression and violence that is just not, we shouldn't tolerate it. And the only way it's going to be dealt with is if the community actually says enough is enough, stands up against it, and actually is proactive about it.
So that's a permanent reminder to you?
Yep, absolutely.
Dr Blair Stirling talking to Lisa Owen at 6:45. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern emerged from a lengthy cabinet meeting today with no clear detail of the promised tightening of gun laws, other than to say that the agreement was unanimous and there's an agreement in principle. She insists it's not a sign of conflict at the cabinet table. All three government parties agree, but she's also launched an inquiry into what government agencies knew before the Christchurch attack in which 50 people were killed. Here's our political reporter, Craig McCulloch.
Jacinda Ardern was quick to promise change after Friday's terror attack, but exactly what and how far still remains unclear.
We have made in-principle decisions today within 72 hours of this act of terror in New Zealand. What we are taking now is a very short space of time to ensure the details around those decisions are firmed up and that we are ready for implementation.
The delay, though, leaves space for questions. What's coming? A ban on semi-automatics, a buyback scheme, a gun register? No answers. Questions too about the quiet. Does it spell conflict around the cabinet table? The Prime Minister says no.
We are of one mind. We are absolutely united as a cabinet.
This was a cabinet decision, and that's the total answer.
The New Zealand First Leader, Winston Peters, also at the media conference. His party has long held pro-gun policies, but Mr Peters signalling a shift in his and his party's position.
After 1 p.m. on the 15th of March, our world changed forever, and so will some of our laws.
Ms Ardern with a message for gun owners too, encouraging those who want to hand in their guns to do so.
You can surrender your gun to the police at any time.
And a pointed message for those reportedly panic buying firearms.
I would exercise caution for anyone who is considering investing at this point. Simply wait a few more days. Have some certainty.
The Prime Minister does have one concrete announcement. There will be an inquiry into the circumstances leading up to the terror attacks.
The purpose of this inquiry is to look at what all relevant agencies knew or could or should have known about the individual and his activities, including his access to weapons and whether they could have been in a position to prevent the attack.
The details of that review are still being ironed out, though it will cover the police, spy agencies, customs and immigration. The SIS and GCSB have welcomed the inquiry, reiterating they had no intelligence themselves or from any of their partners about the man now charged with murder. Ms Ardern says the country will hold a memorial day in the coming weeks to commemorate victims. New Zealand has repeatedly tried and failed to tighten gun control. Eyes now are on whether this parliament can do what previous ones couldn't. Atu iti whare parimata mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Craig McCulloch.
It's just gone past 12 minutes to 7. Turkish authorities investigating the travels of accused Christchurch gunman suspect that he may have been supported or encouraged by a well-resourced organisation. Brenton Tarrant made 2 trips to Turkey in recent years and mentioned sites in the country and the Ottoman Empire in his so-called manifesto. Police and intelligence officials say his level of knowledge and choice of destinations is unusual for a person of his background. The ABC's Eric Torchik reports.
Tarrant made 2 trips to Turkey in 2016 for a total of 43 days. His manifesto and the writing on his weapons mentions the Ottoman Empire and the men who led campaigns against it. The terrorism and security correspondent for Turkish newspaper Hürriyet, Toygun Atilla, says this has aroused suspicion amongst Turkey's intelligence community.
That kind of ordinary profile who is not very well educated and also not rich, this person can't commit such a violent action on his own. Turkish intelligence thinks there's a well-resourced organisation behind this act.
Tarrant had written Turkofagos, meaning Turk eater in Greek, on the barrel of one of his guns. He'd also written the names of notable opponents of the Ottoman Empire from Russia, the Balkans and Azerbaijan in their native scripts.
A person who has an average knowledge of history, or even if he educated himself online, they don't think he can write this detailed information. He wrote this using those countries' own alphabets.
Greek police are also studying Tarrant's travels through the region between 2016 and 2018, as are authorities in Bulgaria, Croatia and Hungary, which have confirmed he visited. Tarrant appears to have worked his way through the region, studying battles between Christians and Muslims dating back to the Crusades in the 12th century. There's intense interest in the Christchurch shootings in Turkey, which sees itself as a leader in the Muslim world. Mr Attila says Turkish authorities will be increasing security for the upcoming Anzac Day commemorations as a result.
They're taking precautions for these kinds of threats and also for the opposite angle, such as there could be some people who could infiltrate among the Australians coming for Anzac Day, who could be like the same profile. So they've already contacted their Australian counterparts about this topic.
But overall, authorities don't believe there's an increased risk for Australians travelling to Turkey. That's echoed on the streets, even amongst people protesting about the killings, such as Saliha Karaman.
It doesn't have anything to do with Australia. If a Muslim kills people in some place, he's also nothing to do with Islam. This attack is made by an Australian guy, but this can't make us be biased against Australian people. Even though an Australian did this, we don't declare Australian people as terrorists.
Turkey's Vice President and Foreign Minister have travelled to Christchurch and met New Zealand's Foreign Minister there yesterday. They've called for a united stance against terrorism.
That's Eric Torchik reporting there. The independent Queensland Senator Fraser Anning has reiterated extreme anti-immigration views and refused to apologise for offensive comments he made right after the Christchurch terror attack. In a video which has gone viral, Mr Anning was egged by a teenager after he linked the Christchurch attacks to the growing fears about Muslims in the community. Now, a bipartisan motion is being put before Parliament in Australia to have him expelled. Fraser Anning was kicked out of the One Nation Party in 2017. He then joined the Australian Party but was booted out of that after a few months over racist comments. Here's the ABC's Melissa Clark.
On the same day that 50 people were massacred at mosques in Christchurch, an Australian senator issued a press release. After one sentence condemning the violence, Senator Fraser Anning's press release went on to blame the massacre of Muslims by an Australian on Muslim immigration and all believers of the faith. Over the weekend, he repeated his remarks, and again today.
I'm just saying that the Muslim influence in the country
escalates violence.
He went on to espouse more racist remarks, by now very familiar from the senator. He was condemned by the Prime Minister Scott Morrison at the weekend and by former Prime Minister Tony Abbott on 2GB this morning.
The atrocity in Christchurch has nothing whatsoever to do with Muslim immigration and everything to do with irrational hatred. And to suggest otherwise is just wrong. So, of course, it was a lunatic thing to say.
The Shadow Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, condemned him too.
He behaved disgracefully in referring to the final solution in his first speech in the Parliament. He's behaved disgracefully in the way he's engaged in racist hate speech. We are calling him out on it.
The Coalition and Labor are planning to move a censure motion against the independent Queensland Senator when Parliament returns next month. Senator Anning entered Parliament in a casual vacancy for One Nation, fell out with One Nation leader Pauline Hanson, briefly joined Katter's Australia Party before splitting with them too, leaving him politically isolated on the furthest fringe of the far right. His censure will receive nearly unanimous support. The one exception, his former colleague Pauline Hanson, as she revealed under questioning by television host David Koch and another Senator, Darren Hinch, this morning.
Will you vote for Anning's censure?
Let's just say...
Will you vote against him next month?
No, let me answer
you
this.
Won't. Oh, no.
A censure is to go out there. It's not going to prove it's going to do anything.
It'll prove where you stand. It'll prove what you think. How are you going to vote? You're voting for it,
I'm not voting for him.
You abstain?
I'm not going to vote.
Will you abstain?
Yes.
That's cowardly. You'll either vote yes or no.
Senator Anning will face voters when the election is called, probably in May. His remarks will win him attention and more votes, but on his own, he's unlikely to be returned to the Senate, as Tony Abbott noted.
I think the voters will disqualify him from office quickly enough. Look, he fluked his way into the Parliament and he won't last. There's no doubt about that.
That was former Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott, also criticising the independent Queensland Senator Fraser Anning, ending Melissa Clark's report. There's fresh reports in from Jakarta as well. The ABC correspondent there, David Lipson, also telling us via Twitter that the Foreign Minister, Retno Marsudi, has called in the Australian ambassador there to explain those comments by Senator Fraser Anning. So criticism not just coming from here and Australia, but also around the world, particularly in countries with large Muslim populations. Now, meanwhile, online donations are continuing to pour in across the Tasman for the teenager who hit Mr Anning in the head. That video that went viral, of course. There was a crowdfunding page set up. It's now raised almost $40,000 for his legal fees. It's amazing how quickly people have come to the cause of that teenager. Some say it was a bit violent. We had Peter Fitzsimons earlier in the program saying that there's a big discussion across the ditch about whether it was violent, whether it was just a larrikin act. People criticising Fraser Anning's response to hit him twice in the face before people stepped in to separate them. Perhaps in response to the people that held the boy in the violent headlock, there's been $40,000 given to him, and as people would expect, the boy is reportedly planning to donate most of that money to the victims of the Christchurch attacks. We've also got feedback coming in. There's been lots of feedback throughout the program tonight. We're going to try to get to a little bit of it now. Tremendous the donations. This is one of our listeners, Ian. He says, tremendous the donations for those affected by the vicious attacks in Christchurch. But he warns that those donations mustn't get caught up in bureaucracy. Could consideration be given to an immediate distribution of $15,000 to each family affected immediately? To take pressure at least off those families. And Ian refers to the touching interview that Lisa did with the man whose twin brother was killed and he's left a widow and 3 children. Ian says it would be well less than a third of that collected. Didn't they do that at Grenfell Towers or at some similar tragedy? We can say there's been, I think, I'm being told, between 5 and 6 million raised so far. So that number is growing. Good to see the generosity of New Zealanders. Jeremy from Napier's got in touch tonight. He says, like the internet, this is about the gun dispute. The owner of Gun City certainly not willing to get into a debate about gun laws today at his press conference. Jeremy says, like the international arms trade, which profits from human misery and hatred, Gun City is showing its true colours by keeping its Christchurch store open even after the dreadful events in that fair city, something the owner callously and insultingly called an incident. Jeremy thinks that that's not the right word to be calling it, and he asks, doesn't the gun lobby remind you of the tobacco industry with its propaganda and lies? That's Jeremy's very strong opinion there. There's also lots of information and expertise coming in tonight about what a ban on semi-automatic weapons would look like. A firearms licence holder of 35 years has been in touch. This is Chris, and he's from Christchurch. He's saying that as a shooter himself, he would only suggest that the only people that need it are people involved in wild animal recovery operations. For example, Eugene Sage's proposed cull of 10,000 Himalayan tahr could not take place if the operators didn't have access to those sorts of rifles of that calibre, and they can get licences to deploy semi-automatics only granted to tax-registered pest destruction companies, and that would be a job done. So that's Chris's point of view. I wanted to finish with one positive note. I think I need it. I think all of us need it. Lisa Owen, that's not the person who's got in touch. They've got in touch about Lisa Owen walking around Hagley Park and all the touching messages there. The hope of those children, this listener says, from Friday morning, linked in messages on that paper chain. This has to be the future, not the poison mind that wrote the manifesto and killed all those people in our land. He's the invader. We are the hope and the future. I thought peace was breaking out on Friday morning, then him. But now solidarity, unity, love and connection. Thanks for getting in touch. Finally tonight, earlier in the program, we did run an interview with Hanan Al-Adem. Her husband was killed in Friday's terror attack. Dr. Amjad Hamid had worked at the Christchurch Hospital. Now, we had some technical issues there, and the last part of the interview froze as it went to air. We'll put that whole interview on our website, so that's the Checkpoint Facebook page as well. I will be back here tomorrow. Lisa Owen is still in Christchurch and we'll be reporting from there. Until then, we'll leave you with students performing a haka at a vigil in Hagley Park this evening. Ka kite anō.
RNZ News at 7. Good evening, I'm Susana Leatawa. The Prime Minister says Cabinet has reached agreement in principle about changes to the gun laws in the wake of the Christchurch attacks, but is not yet revealing the details. Jacinda Ardern emerged from a lengthy Cabinet meeting accompanied by the New Zealand First Leader and Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, saying they agreed there are gaps in the current law and will act accordingly. Both New Zealand First and the Greens were present at the Cabinet meeting. Ms Ardern denies there is any division between the governing parties about the proposals, saying it will just take some time to work through changes to a complex law. She says the government is moving as swiftly as it can.
The terror attack in Christchurch on Friday was the worst act of terrorism on our shores. It was, in fact, one of the worst globally in recent times. It has exposed a range of weaknesses in New Zealand.